So thank you everyone for joining. So my first question is really just about my fellow panelists. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, your role, your experience.
All right. Well, hello everyone. My name is Dominique Top. I'm a solutions architect at GitLab. I do stuff with software. At GitLab we do stuff. We have released a bunch of interesting AI capabilities, which is very interesting to talk about later on. But I do stuff with community, and here I am.
Hi everyone, my name is Hannah Foxwell. I'm a product director at Sneak. I guess I'm here because I'm a little bit of a DevOps elder and I've got grey hairs and wrinkles to prove it. But when I introduce myself, I always go back to my kind of origin story, which was as a release manager for a large retailer. And as a release manager, back in the days when we did releases once every 3 months and manually, I was like, oh my God, there must be a better way. And so I've just been really, really interested in the craft of software development and software delivery ever since. And at the moment, I'm focused on security.
Hi everyone, I'm Sonya Moisset. I'm a senior security advocate at Sneak. I'm also an advocate for open source, DevSecOps, cybersecurity, and AI. So really happy to be here with you and have a great discussion.
Awesome. Thank you so much for introductions and setting the scene. Oh, I can do my intro too. Hi, everyone. I'm Stefania Chaplin. I am a solutions architect at GitLab. I also am known as DevSecOps because you can't have DevOps without Steph. And I do a lot of stuff with community, speaking, very much security, and a little bit of development as well. So yeah, that's my intro. Thanks, Tommy. So on to the panel and talking about GenAI and DevSecOps. So first question, how do GenAI models such as ChatGPT, Duo, Copilot, etc., how do they impact the traditional DevSecOps workflow? Are there any new challenges or opportunities introduced by these tools?
I've got the mic, so I'm just gonna go first. I think I've worked with a lot of sort of maybe old school enterprisey type organizations who are at varying stages of their sort of automation and DevOps and DevSecOps journey. And I think with generative AI, what I see sort of in the real world is another kind of step change in velocity. So these teams were already kind of struggling to keep up with the pace of development, the complexity of environments, the sprawl of technologies, whether it be open source or third party. And I think really it's kind of a compounding effect on the security teams I talked to who were already struggling with the velocity of development. So yeah, that's the sort of impact I'm seeing. I think it's a greater need for more automation, if anything, because of that additional velocity that these amazing coding assistants give you.
That's very fair. No, yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I do see, I speak to a bunch of customers, everybody's really focused on, okay, how can we enable our developers to go really quickly and, move faster and, make sure everything's, out there as quick as possible. But, there's a significant amount of organizations that the security teams go, no, hold on a minute, what are we doing here? Why are we doing this? Can we just please just have a look at why we are doing this, inserting AI in something, especially when the first boom started happening was a year ago or something, when ChatGPT 3 was, I believe, was released into the wild, and then everybody was like, oh, I can just do what I want with this. I can just it writes Terraform code, it writes all this different kinds of things, it writes different weird and wonderful stuff. But I think with everything that I see, especially now, there's a whole load of people that welcome these changes and just go at it with sort of an early adopter kind of mindset. But do we really know if something is secure or not? We still rely on our security teams to make sure that what does get released into production is well, safe. So yeah, I think definitely there's a like a change in mindset, and like trying to keep up with the rate of change is difficult. So yeah, I'm kind of curious to see how we can support that side of the development life cycle as well.
I think just one thing you said there really resonated with me, which was like the perception that security teams are always saying no, and that they're trying to slow things down, and they're really not. They're trying to protect against risk, aren't they? So it's interesting to like put yourself in their shoes and try to have some empathy, but also to think, well, what is the path to success for a security team in this landscape today? Because it's quite different from what it looked like yesterday. I'm going to pass it on to you.
No, I do agree with everything you said around automation and velocity. I think there's a lot of misconception and unknown with GenAI. There's a little bit of magic when people are using AI, and we've been talking about the security side of it, but also I think we also need to talk about the quality of the codes, and having potentially developers who are doing over-reliance on the code that is generated without double-checking if it's following the guys or the paradigm that are using within the company, is just adding those snippet of codes. I think it's great for developers because it's actually scaffolding application quite quickly. It's actually helping you on that side. So it's great for developers. It's a great return on investment. But as I mentioned, it's important not to over-rely on those GenAI or AI-powered tool. But also, as you mentioned, the volume of code now that is generated by those tools is a little bit insane on the security side, just to protect. So the importance of having security tools, those would be the same as developers. I call it the traditional, the new Stack Overflow, if you want, because traditional developers, traditionally they would go on Stack Overflow, ask a question, and copy-paste a snippet of code. Now they just have to prompt, should it be a Copilot or any of the LMs that you might be using. But on the security side, whether it's coming from Stack Overflow or other sources, you actually need to scan that piece of code just to make sure that it follows your policies. So yeah, automation, and just make sure that you have the security tools in place within your pipeline.
You just triggered a thought over here. Like the whole thing with Stack Overflow, like what does the path of a junior dev look like nowadays, right? Like if everything can be like fixed with like a prompt, how to write blah, 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 rather than actually having a meaningful conversation. I mean, I say meaningful, but we all know how toxic some of these places can be. But if you have a meaningful conversation with another human who has the experience, who has seen it like being deployed into production, and like in large organizations, small organizations, having different points of view, from a diversity perspective first and foremost, but like what does the junior dev career path look like? Like you can't just go from junior dev to like senior without actually putting in the work and putting in the effort of like getting the experience. Like that whole, whole process will change. And I'm kind of wondering how we can best facilitate this change and make sure that we still nurture young talent to the point where they can actually have a career progression.
It's funny you said that about going from junior to senior, because it reminds me, I had a junior developer role. I start, and on my first day, small startup, 2 people in the team, and the other person says, oh yeah, so I'm leaving, so for the next month we're going to do handover. And I was like, okay. And Stack Overflow was my best friend. So it's true, like nowadays, what would the workflow be? And based on some of this discussion, I'm just going to mess up the order of my questions totally. So I'm going to question 5. Woohoo! So based on what we're talking about, AI-generated code. So question, can we trust AI-generated code for critical applications? And what measures can be taken to ensure its reliability, safety, and compliance with industry standards?
That's an excellent question. I mean, I'm very much of the opinion that you should never trust something that's auto-generated. Like, I remember, this is a bit of a sidestep, but I remember, like, back in the day where you can, like, generate a band name or generate some random crap, like on the, sorry, pardon my French, generate some random stuff on the internet. Like, where it's you don't know where it's coming from, you don't know where it's, like, what the basis of it is. So I've got this thing where even if you did ask any sort of like generative AI assistants to do something, then you should always double check, if it works, because if it works on your machine, that's, like maybe we should bring that back. but yeah, so like check if it works, like scan it and scan it again, like have other people look at it. You know, there's just a lot of things that we can do to make sure that nothing vulnerable is like making it in its way into our systems. So yeah.
I'm going to answer the question in a slightly different way. It's like, is generative AI code safe to run in production? Like, we don't have a choice. Like, there's some amazing statistics about the adoption of GenAI-based coding tools, and it's something like 92% of developers are using them. There was a recent ban in Italy of OpenAI and the tools associated with that, and I think essentially what happened is there was a kind of visible decrease in productivity across sort of GitHub interactions and contributions from Italy at that time, and then it picked up again. What also picked up is the usage of tools that circumvented all of the government policies and firewalls around the prevention of using these. So I don't think there is a choice about it. These tools are so powerful. They make you so much more efficient that generative, like AI-generated code will be running in production whether you officially allow it or not, because your developers will find a way to use it whether you allow them to or not.
The gift, like life finds a way.
Exactly.
Also just to go back on what you were saying on looking underneath what is how actually this code is populated. So the training set is based on a lot of open source repos, and this is how it's trained. And if we look at those open source repos, a lot of them are not secure because they haven't implemented security tools. So we're actually outputting that level of codes. So this goes back to what we're saying, that we should actually use security tools and scan just to make sure that the code has the same level of security that we have within our pipeline. And yeah, as you were also mentioning, having security policies in place in the in your company, just to make sure what are the usage of should it be Copilot or ChatGPT or Bard or whatever LMs you're using. So yeah, this might be important to have those guardrails, and also try to educate the employees, the developers around AI. For example, last year, OWASP released the top 10 LMs for applications, and there were really interesting vulnerabilities that is mentioned. There obviously not all of the 10 are in the wild, but having, for example, the first one, prompt injection, because that's the one that you're gonna see the most in the wild. So just to explain this, because this could be a concept hard to grasp for the users. So you can for example, try the Gandalf website from Lakura, from the Lakura company. So basically, Gandalf is protecting a password, and you need to social engineer through crafting prompts just to get the password. And Gandalf will level up in a sense, and it will make it a little bit more difficult to grasp the password. So just having that kind of educational way just to present AI just for the users to grasp. Just that potentially there are security vulnerabilities. It's not just magic and fluffy things from outputting ChatGPT.
Yeah, I think like it opens up a whole like what's the word? Opportunity to how can we indeed like protect whatever is happening. Like generative AI is just one thing, right? Like some of the things that we do with GitLab, for example, is not just the generative AI stuff, but like how can we support like anyone in a software development lifecycle by using some AI-related things. You know, for example, I don't want to make it into much of a sales pitch, but like I do believe what we sell, basically. So, but like, you know, like for example, issue summaries, or if you have a whole conversation with people and you have to normally grab a cup of tea and like try to parse whatever's being said and like trying to figure out what's going on and what the questions are, having AI like summarize stuff for you is useful. Another thing that I think is really awesome, and I think that we will see more of this in the future, is like helping people, from the educational side of things, explaining vulnerabilities, like what part of my code is wrong, how can I fix this, like what's the potential impact of what I'm potentially trying to release into the wild, and this Gandalf thing, I've never heard of that, but that seems super interesting. Like, is there any sort of other ethical things that we can do to make sure that like the training, like the models are not biased, that are, how can we trust what's in there? And something else that I just remembered, I had a conversation with, I was on a CTO sort of roundtable, and there were some like really high level people in different organizations, and some of them are like, oh yeah, like we love this all kind of stuff, we do all this, everything with like, generative AI and like coding assistants, and then there was another person also on the, like I think it was a CISO or something, and he was like, oh no, I'm literally, it's like I'm blocking everything, like I've got no idea, like. And then he taught me the concept of like model poisoning or something like that. Like, we have no idea what's happening. Like, if somebody is like has a malicious intent, like how can we just literally poison a language, like a training, like a data set? Like it happens, and we don't know what if that's happening, like with the models we use. So I'm really interested to see like what kind of like protection or like additional sort of pieces of software people are writing, or like frameworks or things, so we can make sure that it's all becoming more safer.
Yeah, I can give you an example on back to prompt injection, because we're talking about the educational example with Gandalf, but actually Chevrolet has a good example with their implemented ChatGPT within their chatbots, and their user, they were able to buy, through prompting, they were able to buy a car for $1. Because they didn't actually set guardrails in the input and output, so you could potentially social engineer their chatbot. They literally dumped the chatbot, and they haven't actually put guardrails on it. So this is real life examples, that you could have by manipulating this, and that's where we go back to educating the user and developers that it's good to use AI, because this is we should be using AI, but you need to actually put guardrails around it.
Yeah, I would just add to that I think they're really difficult, if not impossible, to reverse engineer. Why did the model output this in this way? They're so complex and they're continuously evolving. It's not an if this then that kind of process that we're used to. It's very chaotic. It can be unpredictable, and you can't explain why you got the result you did. And so I think we're at the very, very early stages of this technology, and I think we need to figure out ways of having a degree of control of them. But honestly, I think this is like the domain of like innovation and research. I don't think we have those answers yet.
No. Sorry, I'm just and I think as an industry, as like the people in the room, I think we have a duty to make sure that we make it safe for the normal people. Like, for example, if my mother goes to OpenAI, goes to use this piece of software just because somebody said it was useful and this will help her do things, it's up to us to make sure it's safe for people. Like, we need to make sure that we understand something so we can teach other people that might not be as tech literate as the people in this room, for example. Like, if I've got a sneaky suspicion, I feel like this is going to happen, like it's going to become such an integral part of our lives, it's going to get worse before it gets better, I guess. But yeah, like I want to make sure that like my brother, for example, who's like very much Gen Z, that he can like benefit from the things without, getting his identity stolen or something like that, or like having his bank details just on the street somewhere, So it's stuff like that I'm.
Sorry, I wanted to jump on something. No, because coming back to if we should trust it on production, well, actually within the security ecosystem, we're already using applications with AI, for example, Darktrace or CrowdStrike. We're already using based on ML algorithms. So these aren't pushed on productions, because we're using these tools. But the thing is, for those tools, we need to actually train the users, so the SOC analyst, to actually leverage those new ML algorithms to actually fine-tune and make sure that we're catching the right patterns with these tools. So we could potentially trust them, but there's a high effort on training the users to make it work. Yeah.
Yeah, it's you've touched on kind of a couple of points as you've been discussing in terms of generative AI is everywhere. There are, definitely positives. It's already in production, but what about the unintended consequences? What about the guardrails? How can we use this at scale, and how can we use it safely? And then my phone turns off, so I lose my question. So in terms of for organizations, how can organizations balance the benefits of using generative AI with the risks associated with model drift, data privacy, and unintended consequences?
I think there's like a level of literacy that we need around these technologies that we don't really have at the moment. And I think it's going to be increasingly important that everybody who works in both the technical domain and around the technical domain has literacy around these. So I think that we've got a big learning curve to go through, and I can imagine that there are going to be some high-profile mistakes made that will shine a light on it. But it's very interesting, and I think maybe this is a great conference to talk about it. But where are those resources right now in the open and available for everybody to use, so that we can empower each other? Like, there are domain experts for sure, but we can't delegate everything to a small group of people. I think we all have to level up on these technologies. Who am I passing to?
Yeah, it's fine. I mean,
No, in terms of, because we're talking about data and privacy, I was thinking also there's the intellectual property, also that the question around that. I have an example in mind with Samsung Electronics. Like any other tech companies, they actually accepted the fact that their employees were using ChatGPT, and actually their employees unintentionally pushed some source code from their latest products and some meeting notes as well. So this has been pushed to ChatGPT, which wasn't great. So Samsung Electronics decided to actually block this through security policy, and they're actually working on an internal AI power tool that their employees can securely and safely use internally. This is something that we need to keep in mind, because when we're using these tools, we're actually giving away our IPs as well, potentially our sensitive data. And we've seen it at the beginning of GitHub Copilot when developers were prompting, and sometimes one of the snippet of code was referring to an API key, and potentially it was a valid API key or credentials through it. So these are also things to keep in mind as well.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. Like from a privacy perspective, I think that most companies, especially the people that we speak to, are like, okay, can we just have our own LLM? Can we have our own systems, like on our own like data centers, and our own bits and pieces, non-accessible to everybody else? Which, I mean, is a fair statement. But then, like, the one thing that I'm thinking about then is like, okay, well, let's talk about sustainability then. Like all of these prompts and all of these things that will cost a lot of resources, and like the data centers that have to run them. I think there was I saw a talk somewhere. I'll have to figure out which one it was, but it was after, like, in the last since GPT was released, like there was an output of like an exponential amount of like heat and electricity being used just to like run the whole thing. And if people are like, if organizations are wanting to have this in their own systems, then that will increase their like carbon footprint and all that kind of stuff. And I think that, again, like this is something that we've talked about, I think with State of Open last year, for example. We also have a duty to make sure that we don't like ruin our planet further, right? Like that's a thing. So like, even if generative AI is very interesting and very helpful in like getting like our business goals and our software faster and like helping people and stuff like that, we also need to make sure it doesn't have a further impact on, that kind of stuff. So I'm wondering how we can do that.
No. I mean, yeah, a couple of years ago, we were worried about blockchain and crypto burning down the planet, and now I think we need to just add AI to the mix because it is so resource intensive.
Yeah, I think I can't remember the name of the open source project, but there's a couple of open source projects that are actually playing on the weights. I forget about the technical term, but they're modifying the weight of the model, which makes actually a smaller model, but you could more or less have the same quality of output as ChatGPT or Bard or others, and you can actually run it locally on your machine, which could potentially decrease the we're talking about sustainability, but obviously that's a big questions. Yeah.
Okay, moving on to ethics, and I know none of us are software lawyers, so don't worry, I won't hold this answer. But I think it's a talking point that gets. I at least have been asked this at least 3 times this month, so see what you have to say. What ethical concerns arise from integrating AI into the DevSecOps process? For example, this is the drum roll. Who is responsible when things go wrong if an AI system generates faulty or insecure code?
We don't promote a blame culture, so that is a trick question. Nobody is at fault. What system was in place that allowed that problem to occur, and what can we do better and learn from next time?
Great remediation advice. I love it. I'm not sure about the ethics in the security space particularly, but I think broadly the issue around plagiarism and intellectual property is a huge one, and the need for there to be human intelligence to oversee like all of these processes and input into them is fundamental. Maybe I'm naive, but I can't see a future where we run businesses entirely through different bots which are programmed to achieve different roles. You've got the bots that do your marketing, and you've got your bots that do the SEO, and the bots that do your code, and your bots that do the security. There has to be a human architect for all of this, and I think that's for now.
That's exactly. we're just robot minders now. That's our role. But on ethics, I think there's a lot we need to do around data protection and plagiarism and protecting intellectual property that is breaking new ground.
Yeah. Yes, agreed.
+1.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen like TV shows and movies about this kind of stuff, right? Where the AI is taking over the world and stuff like that. But from an ethics perspective, I think the other thing that I would like to see, I've had a conversation about this with people, like ethics in one country is different than ethics in the next country. Like we have to, I would like to see something like a global sort of initiative, and I think there's some stuff on the way, like a global initiative where we can at least set some sort of standard, as in like, okay, this is the base level ethics that we need to achieve when it comes to usage of AI. But like I was speaking to a friend who works in human rights, like how can we achieve this? Like how can we make sure that like our culture, for example, in the UK is completely different than like the culture in, let's say, I don't know, Brazil or America or anywhere. Like every single country that does stuff with software have a different ethical mindset about things. And how can we make sure that this whole industry is at least in touch with each other about this kind of stuff, like things that we care about or things that we find logical or fine or okay to do, or like ethically gray maybe, like that might be completely inappropriate in, I don't know, let's say Dubai or so. I'm just like spitballing here, but it's that kind of stuff. Like I think Amanda said this earlier, like we're all global, in this industry, we're all global parts of like open source. And how can we also, like, I haven't seen any sort of like movements into like, how can we make sure that the ethics side of things specifically with AI is gonna, like have some sort of common ground, like there's a lot of discussion and friction out there that I'm wondering if we can ever reach a certain common ground. I would like to see it, and I hope that's there soon. Don't want to make it too dark.
World peace.
World peace, yes.
And world peace.
To go back to your point, like we don't have a blame culture. I think it's really hard to actually track down the source of potentially the error produced by the codes, hence the need to actually have guardrails on the side for it. Going back to the ethicals points, maybe have a look at the company which is providing the LM and see if they do have some ethicals manifesto or that kind. I know that Google, for their AI, they do have 7 principles around ethics, anti-bias, and all of those. So they do actually have this on their website. I think also OpenAI do have it somewhere on the website. So yeah, this will depend on if you're doing a little bit of research and see if this is really true, if there really stands to their guidance or manifesto. So yeah, this open question.
Yeah, it's a very nascent space. So yeah, to your point, Hannah, I think the guidelines will evolve, but we're at a very preliminary stage where we can all level ourselves up. So on that, looking at the DevSecOps practitioners potentially in the room, what skills and expertise will be most valuable for DevSecOps practitioners in a world where AI plays an increasingly important role? How can individuals and organizations prepare for this shift?
You're probably going to get the sneak opinion on this anyway.
I'm not giving the sneak opinion, so this is vendor neutral today, so yeah. No, I would say, first of all, have some basics around AI and ML. I'm not talking about having a PhD in those domains, but just having like basic understanding of what is going on, how it works. This could potentially help. Also, having collaboration and communication between the different teams, because we're talking about DevSecOps at the end of the day. So we've been talking a lot about GenAI, but if we talk about DevSecOps, it's also about collaboration and communication between the teams. So it's important to have everyone on the same page when we're implementing a tool. Why we are actually implementing the tool, not because it's an AI-powered tool just for the hype, but having the why, the what. This is really important, the return on investments. So having that collaboration level, also.
No, I mean, it's just building on what you said, really. It's anything that really causes friction or causes developers to slow down is going to struggle to get wide adoption. And I think when you don't have wide adoption of your security practices, you end up with blind spots, and blind spots introduce risk. And so we need to make it really easy for developers to adopt good security practices. And that comes down to automation. Even with automation, you can cause like unintended consequences in that you can generate a lot of noise. Look, we found 1,000 CVEs. What you going to do about it? Like, here's 1,000 Jira tickets. You know, that's actually not the answer. Like, you do want everyone to be aware of the CVEs, but they're not all equal. They're not all exploitable in your context. And so it's about interpreting all of that data that you can gather through automation and then really being very specific about what risk that is and how you need to act and fix it. And so I think in terms of like the DevSecOps space, as I said, I think it's the GenAI aspect for me is just moving and compounding a lot of the bottlenecks that exist in security at the moment. And so when we talk about the amount of noise that security tools can create, that's going to get worse with GenAI making development so much faster.
Yes.
Plus one.
All of the above. No, yeah, I mean, you know, in that sense, like it's what kind of skills people need or like what kind of communication. Obviously, like, you know, we're all in the DevSecOps space. Like, it's all about people, process, and technology in that order. I think, you know, having an understanding of you know, each of the pieces of the puzzle in the software development lifecycle. Like we do a lot of stuff with like value stream assessments and management and value stream mapping and stuff like that. Like having a good understanding of the relationship of each of the segments within your organization. You know, what kind of influence has, you know, if ticket gets picked up, the ticket gets worked on by the developer puts it into a CI pipeline, and then things get deployed, like chuck it over the fence. Like if everybody in each of these segments have an understanding of how long it takes to get from one place to another, what happens once something does get found, like does it get kicked back to the others, like to the end of the queue, like you're gonna have to hope that the people who worked on the code in the first place know what the hell they were doing. You know, there's so much stuff there. So I think from like a what can we all do to make sure that this is useful, like having empathy, you know, like I feel like there's a lack of empathy in some organizations, but having empathy for the teams that you work with, like your adjacent teams, like understanding your role within the whole with the whole process, and then definitely like understanding, you know, like having a better understanding of what it is that you see in front of you, you know, what has been used with AI, like how can we leverage things and make, you know, everybody a bit quicker. More efficient.
More efficient.
More efficient. I love efficiency.
I love efficiency. Oh my God, I was just about to say. So we've got about 7 minutes left. I have one final question, and then maybe we can do a closing, or we could just gamble and ask the audience, but up to you guys. So my final question, so looking forward, how might AI continue to reshape how we develop, deploy, and secure software? Will it eventually render DevSecOps obsolete, or simply transform it beyond recognition?
I think that will definitely be transformed beyond recognition. I think that definitely, you know, like throughout the last, let's say, decade of like DevOps and DevSecOps, I think there's been a lot of changes in the way people do things. I do strongly believe there's always going to be a need for human intervention with a lot of things. Like the creativity of a human is not going to be anywhere near, you know, anything that can be generated is based on something that's already been thought of, right? Like everything that like these language models do, I don't think there's anything original in there apart from like picking things apart from stuff that other people have already created. And it's the same with music, in my opinion. Like there's always going to be new music release, even if they, you know, like if you look at things from like 50 years ago, things compared to things that are happening now, there's going to be innovation, there's going to be like creativity out there. Like it's definitely going to change, but I don't think anyone is going to, at least in our industry, has to fear for their jobs.
For now.
I mean, there's a case to say it's sort of like it could be the opposite, because at Sneak, if we can build models that test your software for security vulnerabilities, then absolutely. So can GitHub, so can GitLab. And the more these are actually baked into the development process, the more secure this AI-generated code will be. And so I think at the moment, there are issues with AI-generated code. It can produce vulnerable code, and you need to be testing it. I think that's a short-term problem. I think these models will get better, they'll be able to correct themselves. And so I do think that we are looking at a future where, you know, quality is actually increased as a result of this, and the concerns actually that as a security professional, as a developer, that you spend your time worrying about are actually elevated above that. What does the code do, and does the code work, and is the code secure level, which is actually quite exciting, isn't it?
You were just saying something like, if every company is like making sure that everything that gets generated is secure, I think you underestimate how sneaky some people can be, like no pun intended. like it's like you know, like I know some people that like make it a sport to make sure that they can break things. You know, so even if we did like have all kinds of like super fancy generative AI things that will, you know, generate like secure software for us, I can guarantee there will be a percentage of humans in this world that are going to do their best to make sure that they break things. And I think that human creativity is not something you can put in a model.
No, that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I do agree on both. I was thinking also something that we haven't discussed, because we're talking about ideally everyone is using GenAI, but there's also cost associated to it, and potentially not all companies can afford on both sides, on the development side with Copilot, which is not a free tool, but also both on the security side with the different security tools that there are AI-powered tools. That's a budget actually that they need to take into account, that potentially they can't afford those GenAI tools, which potentially be a good thing for DevSecOps. I don't know, to discuss.
So yeah, we've got a few minutes left. Any questions from the audience? I can come and give you a mic. Got one in the back. Sorry, I got there first.
Jesus, up. Hi. So, like, one question that I do have, we were talking about, like, what does the world of a junior dev look like? And having used Copilot, I kind of feel like there's the people on one end of the spectrum, you know, accountant, never codes, never going to ship any code. One day, they have to submit a report that they generate with a Python script that Copilot makes for them. Fantastic. On the other side of the spectrum, you have a developer who's experienced enough to look at what Copilot spits out and say, I can actually refactor this, I can assess it, and I can write unit tests. And it's kind of the people in the middle that I feel are sort of screwed. So that knows enough to be dangerous window. Do you see that changing size or moving anytime soon? Or like a world in which junior devs are told, don't use AI assistants for that reason?
I'm not sure if you can actually tell junior devs, like, okay, all of the seniors get access to this, but as a junior dev, you have to make your own mistakes first. I'm not sure if that's something that you can just say to, like, I mean, it could be an interesting policy to implement, but I'm not sure how reasonable or sensible that is. I mean, there's definitely, you know, I think people will life finds a way, right? Like, if you can't like use it on like work-sponsored systems, I'm sure it will have like a bunch of machines at home that will do something for you, right? So, does that gap get larger? Maybe. I definitely think there will be. We need to come up with a way of making sure, like, protecting, well, junior devs' career progression, especially for underrepresented groups. You know, like there's, you know, that's a whole different conversation in itself. Find me afterwards. But like, there's definitely, you know, like we need to come up with something like how can we still make sure that there is a career progression there for people? Because I think a lot of people that I know that are already like at this level of like, oh, yeah, I can write unit tests in my sleep kind of thing. You know, like we do need to come up with opportunities for people to get to the same stage. So yeah, that's definitely something that you can do or that we should be looking after in companies.
We've got about a minute left.
Oh.
Okay, so it's not like AI has replaced lazy junior devs. We all had Stack Overflow before, right? So the fact of the matter is, no matter where they got the initial code, because God so help me, they did not write that 7,000 line thing themselves. They pulled it from the internet. If you're not still doing pure programming and extreme programming, then your developers won't learn anything. And increasingly, I'm concerned about hiring junior devs from large companies because they're not receiving that support.
We've got, well, I don't know, it's 1:44. I can just do my little wrap up. Well, thank you everyone for joining, and thank you especially for our panelists for the awesome conversation.